Close your eyes and let the world fall away. Take a slow breath in. Feel your chest rise gently and release it, letting your body sink deeper into wherever you rest tonight. Another breath, slower this time. In through your nose and out through your mouth, soft as a whisper. Feel the quiet settling around you like a velvet cloak. Soft and dark and endlessly comfortable. Tonight, we travel to ancient Persia, to an empire of gardens and grandeur, of philosophers and kings, of roads that stretched across continents, and ideas that still echo through time. But first, let your body settle. Feel the weight of your limbs growing heavier, the softness beneath you, cradling every curve of your form. The quiet that surrounds you now wrapping you in stillness. Ancient Persia was famous for its gardens. The Persians invented the very concept of the garden as a place of beauty and contemplation. They called it paradise, which is where we get our word paradise. Imagine cool stone pathways beneath your feet, water trickling somewhere nearby, cypress trees standing like dark sentinels against a twilight sky. Tonight, you will walk through that paradise. You will hear the fountains murmuring their ancient songs, feel the cool evening air brush against your skin, and let the ancient world carry you gently towards sleep. Take another breath, slower still, and imagine the scent of roses drifting toward you across thousands of years, across deserts and mountains and seas, all the way to this quiet moment. The roses are blooming in the darkness, their petals soft as the sleep that will soon embrace you, their fragrance sweet and timeless. Let your shoulders release any tension they hold. Let your jaw unclench. Let your eyes rest heavy beneath their lids. The Persian Empire awaits, vast and ancient and beautiful, and it will guide you through the night like a gentle current, asking nothing of you but stillness and breath and the willingness to drift. You are safe here. You are warm. The gates are opening now, at the height of its power. Roughly 2,500 years ago, the Persian Empire was the largest the world had ever seen. Breathe slowly as you consider this. Let your mind expand to hold the vastness of it, the way the night sky expands when you truly look at it, endless and deep and full of quiet wonder. From the snow-capped mountains of the Hindu Kush in the east, where glaciers crept slowly down ancient valleys, and the air was thin and cold and pure, to the warm shores of the Aegean Sea in the west, where fishing boats bobbed gently in harbours that smelled of salt and cedar. From the windswept steppes of Central Asia, where horses ran wild beneath endless skies, their manes streaming behind them like banners, to the golden deserts of Egypt, where the pyramids had already stood for 2,000 years, watching over the Nile with patient stone eyes. All of this connected under one rule, one system of roads and laws and governance, one vast dreaming empire stretching across the known world. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the tension leaving your neck as the scope of this ancient realm settles over you like a soft blanket. The empire covered approximately 2 million square miles, home to perhaps 40% of the world's population at that time. Imagine that, nearly half of all the people alive on Earth, living within the borders of Persia. Egyptians who had built monuments that touched the clouds, Babylonians who had charted the movements of stars for 1,000 years, Greeks who were just beginning to ask their famous questions about truth and beauty, Indians who meditated in forest groves. Phoenicians who sailed the wine-dark sea in ships of Lebanese cedar. Medes who remembered when they themselves had been the masters of the plateau. Jews who had been freed from Babylonian exile by Persian decree. Lydians who had invented coined money, all of them subjects of the King of Kings. Breathe in, slowly, deeply, and let your body relax deeper into wherever you are resting tonight. The numbers matter less than the feeling of it, the sense of something vast and organized and, in its way, peaceful. An empire held together, not only by force, but by roads and letters, and the movement of ideas from one horizon to another. The empire began in the region we now call Iran, a land of contrasts and hidden beauty, a place where the earth itself seemed to hold secrets. High mountain ranges cut across the landscape, the Zagros in the west, rising like the spine of some great sleeping beast, the Alborz in the north, their peaks catching snow that glittered in winter sunlight, while valleys below bloomed with fruit trees and flowers when spring came soft and warm. Between the mountains lay plateaus, dry in summer beneath skies of burning blue, cold in winter when winds swept down from the heights, but crossed by careful irrigation channels that brought water from distant streams to fields of wheat and barley, and the orchards where apricots ripened gold as sunset. Feel your breathing deepen. Let your chest rise and fall with the rhythm of ancient seasons, of snow melting in spring, of rivers swelling and subsiding, of crops planted and harvested under the same sun that warms your face in memory. The Persians were originally a semi-nomadic people, herders and horsemen who had migrated onto the Iranian plateau centuries before their rise to power. They knew the feel of rough wool blankets, the smell of wood smoke rising from campfires, the sound of sheep bells in morning mist. They were related to the Medes, another Iranian people who had built the first great empire in the region, fierce warriors who had helped bring down mighty Assyria. The Persians lived in the southern part of the plateau, in a region called Parsa, which would eventually give the empire its name. Parsa, Persia, words that rolled off the tongue like water over smooth stones. Let your breathing slow, in and out, like the rhythm of caravans moving across ancient roads, the soft padding of camel feet on packed earth, the creak of wooden wheels, the distant jingle of bells marking the passing of merchants beneath a canopy of stars. The rise of Persia began with a single man, Cyrus the Sun, whom history would remember as Cyrus the Great. Around 559 BCE, Cyrus became king of the Persians, a relatively minor position at the time. His people were vassals of the powerful Median Empire, paying tribute, bowing to foreign kings. But Cyrus was ambitious and patient and brilliant, the kind of leader who appears perhaps once in a millennium, changing everything he touches. Within a decade, he had overthrown the Median king and united the Iranian peoples under his rule. The highlands rang with the news, carried by riders on swift horses, shouted from watchtower to watchtower. A new power had risen. Then he turned outward, conquering the wealthy kingdom of Lydia in what is now Turkey, where King Croesus had been so rich that his name became a proverb, absorbing the Greek cities of the Ionian coast, where philosophers were just beginning to wonder about the nature of reality, pushing east towards Central Asia, where the grasslands seemed to go on forever. And then, in 539 BCE, came the conquest that would define his legacy. Babylon, the ancient jewel of Mesopotamia, the city of hanging gardens and towering ziggurats, where priests had watched the stars for 1,000 years, where the great gate of Ishtar gleamed with blue-glazed bricks depicting lions and dragons. Babylon fell to Cyrus without a siege. The Babylonians, weary of their own king, opened their gates to the Persian conqueror. And Cyrus, unlike so many conquerors before and after, did not burn or pillage. He honored the local gods. He freed the Jews who had been held captive there for generations, allowing them to return home and rebuild their temple. Feel your body growing heavier, more relaxed, sinking gently into warmth and softness as the story unfolds like a tapestry being slowly unrolled, thread by golden thread. Cyrus was followed by his son Cambyses, who added Egypt to the empire, marching his armies across the Sinai, adding the land of pharaohs to Persian dominion. And then came Darius the Mer, called Darius the Great, who organized the vast territories into a system that would last for 2 centuries. Darius divided the empire into provinces called satrapies, each governed by a satrap appointed by the king, men who held enormous power but answered always to the throne. He standardized weights and measures, so a merchant in Egypt could trade fairly with a merchant in Bactria. Introduced a common currency, gold darics stamped with the image of the king, and built the famous Royal Road, a highway stretching nearly 1,700 miles from the capital at Susa to the Aegean coast. Messengers on horseback could travel this road in just 9 days, changing horses at stations along the way, riding through dawn and dusk and starlight. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote of these messengers, "Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor darkness of night prevents them from accomplishing their appointed course with all speed." Words that would echo through millennia, eventually inspiring the motto of postal services far in the future. A gift from ancient Persia to the modern world. The Persians built not one capital, but several, following the seasons, following the needs of empire. Susa in the lowlands, warm in winter, where palm trees swayed, and the king held court in halls of painted brick. Ecbatana in the mountains, cool in summer, where the air was thin and sweet, and the nights brought blessed relief from heat. Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the empire, where the king received tribute from all the nations under his rule, a city of carved stone and towering columns. And Pasargadae, where Cyrus was buried, his simple tomb standing alone in a garden, modest even in death. Always gardens. The Persians carried their love of gardens wherever they went, creating oases of green in deserts, planting trees along roadsides for shade and beauty, building walled enclosures where water and shade and flowers could flourish despite the harshness of the land beyond. Paradise, paradisa, a walled garden, a protected space where beauty grows undisturbed, where roses bloom beside running water, where the world outside cannot enter. Let that image settle into your mind as your eyes grow heavy. A garden surrounded by high walls, safe from the wind and dust of the world outside. Inside, roses and pomegranates, cypress trees reaching toward the sky like dark green flames, the gentle sound of water moving through channels carved in stone. This is where you are drifting tonight, toward your own paradisa, your own paradise of sleep. The empire lasted for over 200 years, generation after generation, until Alexander of Macedon swept through like a sudden storm in 330 BCE. But the influence of Persia, its ideas about governance and human rights, its art and architecture, its gardens and its dreams. These things outlasted any conqueror. They seeped into the soil of history, and they bloom still, even now, even tonight, as you drift closer and closer to peaceful sleep. Imagine yourself in the Persian Empire, not as a visitor, but as someone who belongs here. Perhaps you are a scribe in Persepolis, your fingers still stained with the dark ink of cuneiform tablets, or a gardener in the royal grounds, your hands rough from tending roses and pomegranate trees, or simply a traveller passing through on the great royal road, your sandals worn thin from countless miles. Whoever you are, the sun is setting and the world is growing quiet. Breathe in and smell the evening air. It carries the scent of dust and distant roses, of cooking fires and incense, of the particular sweetness that comes when the heat of day releases its grip and the cool of night begins to settle. There is something else too. The faint mineral smell of water from the Qanat channels, those underground aqueducts that carried snowmelt from distant mountains to sustain life in the arid plains. The Persians were masters of water, and its presence, even when unseen, perfumed the air with possibility. The cities of Persia were unlike anything the ancient world had seen. Not cramped and chaotic, but planned and spacious, with wide streets and careful drainage, with gardens and parks woven into the urban fabric. The Persians believed that order was sacred, that beauty was a form of worship, that the world itself was a battleground between light and darkness, and that humans could choose which side to serve. Every straight avenue, every flowering courtyard, every carefully placed tree was a small victory for light. Let your body relax deeper. Feel the tension leaving your muscles one by one as we walk together through this ancient world. The homes of ordinary Persians were built of mud brick, cool in summer and warm in winter. They faced inward, towards central courtyards, where families gathered, where children played, where fruit trees provided shade and sustenance. The walls that faced the street were plain, unadorned, giving nothing away. Privacy was valued. The inner life of the family was sacred, protected from the gaze of strangers like a precious jewel kept in a simple box. But inside those walls, there was often surprising beauty. Floors might be covered with woolen carpets, woven in intricate patterns that told stories or represented gardens in abstract form. The Persians are credited with inventing the knotted carpet, and their designs would influence rug making for thousands of years. Imagine the softness beneath your feet. The colors faded now, but once vibrant. Reds and blues and golds that glowed in lamplight, each knot tied by patient hands, each pattern a meditation, each carpet a garden you could walk upon, even in the depths of winter. Feel your feet relaxing, the arches releasing, the toes growing still and heavy. In the courtyards of these homes, small pools often reflected the sky. The Persians loved water, not just for its practical uses, but for its beauty, its sound, its ability to bring the heavens down to earth. Even modest families might have a basin where goldfish swam lazily, where the evening stars would appear in miniature, where the splash of a fountain could mask the sounds of the street and create a pocket of tranquility. Food in Persia was abundant and varied. The empire's vast territories meant that ingredients from across the known world found their way to Persian tables. Rice from the marshes of Mesopotamia, pomegranates from the slopes of the Zagros, saffron from the fields of the plateau, dates from the palm groves of the south, pistachios and almonds and walnuts from mountain orchards. Spices traveled along trade routes from India. Salt came from ancient mines. Honey was gathered from hives kept in flowering orchards. The Persians loved meat, lamb and goat and game birds, slow cooked with dried fruits and spices until tender and sweet and fragrant. They drank wine from golden cups and water sweetened with rose petals. At royal banquets, hundreds of dishes might be served, and the feasting could last for days. Servants would bring platters piled high with rice stained golden with saffron, with stews thick with apricots and almonds, with flatbreads warm from clay ovens. But tonight is quiet. A simple meal of bread and yogurt and fresh herbs, eaten as the stars emerge one by one overhead. The bread is soft and warm, the yogurt cool and slightly sour, the herbs bright with the taste of mint and dill. This is how most Persians ate, simply but well, grateful for the bounty that the empire's peace made possible. The religion of ancient Persia was Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest prophetic faiths. Its founder, Zoroaster, had lived centuries before the empire's rise, perhaps around 1500 BCE. Though scholars debate the date, he taught that the universe was created by a single wise god called Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom, and that this god was locked in an eternal struggle with the forces of darkness and lies. Breathe slowly. Let the ancient ideas drift past like clouds. Zoroastrians worshipped fire as a symbol of truth and divine light. Temples contained sacred flames that were never allowed to go out, tended by priests who covered their mouths lest their breath pollute the pure fire. The religion taught that humans had free will, that they could choose between good and evil, and that their choices mattered. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. This was the Zoroastrian creed, whispered in prayers, taught to children, inscribed on the hearts of believers. At the end of time, Zoroaster promised good would triumph, the dead would be resurrected, and the world would be purified and renewed. The wicked would be cleansed by rivers of molten metal, and all humanity would live forever in a paradise of light. These ideas of a cosmic battle between good and evil, of resurrection and final judgment, would influence Judaism and Christianity and Islam in ways that scholars are still tracing. Let your jaw relax. Let your tongue rest easy in your mouth. Let the thoughts grow simpler and softer. The Persian king was considered the representative of Ahura Mazda on earth, not a god himself, but the chosen instrument of divine will. He was called the Shahanshah, the King of Kings, because he ruled over many lesser kings and governors. His word was law. His presence was sacred. Those who approached him had to prostrate themselves and kiss the ground before his throne. And yet, for all this ceremony, the Persian kings were often remarkably tolerant. They did not force their religion on conquered peoples. They did not demand that everyone speak Persian or dress in Persian fashion. They collected taxes, required military service, insisted on loyalty. But beyond that, they allowed tremendous diversity. This was the genius of the empire. It was held together not primarily by force, but by a system that made being part of it advantageous. The roads were safe, trade flourished, local customs were respected, the Pax Persica, the Persian peace, was real. Merchants could travel thousands of miles knowing that royal guards patrolled the routes, that inns awaited them at regular intervals, that their goods and their lives were protected by the king's law. Imagine that peace settling over you now, the protection of something vast and ordered, holding the chaos of the world at bay while you rest. At Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, the architecture itself told a story of unity in diversity. The great stairways leading to the Apadana, the audience hall of the king, were covered with reliefs showing delegations from every corner of the empire. Medes in rounded caps and long robes, Babylonians with curled beards carrying ornate vessels, Egyptians leading cattle, Ethiopians bearing elephant tusks, Indians with containers of gold dust, Lydians presenting precious cups, Armenians with horses, Cappadocians with folded textiles. None of these figures are shown in postures of defeat or humiliation. They walk upright. They carry their gifts with dignity. They represent their nations with pride. This was the Persian message, carved in stone. We rule the world, and the world comes to us willingly, bearing its treasures, participating in something greater than any single people could create alone. Let your eyes rest heavier beneath their lids. Let the images fade and soften. Let the stone reliefs blur into dreams. The columns of Persepolis reached 20 meters into the air, topped with capitals in the shape of bulls or lions or mythical creatures, with the bodies of bulls and the heads of bearded men. Between the columns, the mountain air moved freely, cool and clean, carrying the scent of wild thyme from the slopes above. The ceilings were of precious cedar, imported from Lebanon across hundreds of miles, and they filled the halls with a faint, sweet fragrance that never quite faded. The walls were painted in vivid colors that time has stripped away, leaving only the bare stone that tourists photograph today. But in its glory, Persepolis blazed with color, blues and reds and golds. The king's robes were purple, dyed with the precious murex of the Mediterranean. The guards carried golden spears. The throne room glittered with inlaid gems, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, turquoise from the desert, carnelian red as sunset. All of this, built not by slaves, as far as we know, but by paid workers from across the empire. Tablets discovered at Persepolis record the wages given to men and women who carved and built and decorated. They received rations of wine and grain and meat. Some were specialists brought from distant lands, their skills valued and compensated. Women received the same pay as men for the same work, and those who gave birth received extra rations, a recognition of their labor in bringing new life into the world. This too was the Persian way, not cruelty, but competence, not domination, but organization. The empire worked because it was designed to work, and because there were rewards for cooperation. Feel the weight of your body, supported and held, like the weight of a great empire, resting on the foundations of good governance. As darkness falls over the ancient city, you can hear the sounds of evening. Somewhere, a musician plays a stringed instrument, the notes rising and falling like a voice telling a story without words. Dogs bark in the distance. A child laughs. The smell of smoke from cooking fires mingles with the ever-present scent of flowers from the royal gardens, jasmine and rose, and something else, something sweet and unnameable that belongs only to this place and time. The stars are appearing now, the same stars that shine above you tonight, unchanged across the millennia. The Persians studied those stars. They were skilled astronomers. They tracked the movements of planets and predicted eclipses. They believed the stars influenced human fate, and they looked upward for signs and guidance, mapping the heavens with patient precision. Look up with them, in your mind's eye, and see the ancient sky unmarred by artificial light. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a river of light. The planets glow steadily among the twinkling stars. The moon, perhaps a crescent, hangs low in the west, and somewhere in the royal gardens, nightingales are beginning to sing, their voices liquid and pure, rising and falling in melodies that have echoed through Persian poetry for 3,000 years. This is the Persia of your dreams tonight, vast and beautiful and peaceful. Let it carry you gently forward, deeper into the story, deeper into sleep. The story of Cyrus the Great is one of the most remarkable in human history. And tonight, as you drift deeper into relaxation, let it unfold before you like a tapestry woven of silk and gold, each thread catching the light of distant fires, each pattern revealing secrets that have endured for 2,500 years. Breathe slowly. Feel your heartbeat slowing, steady and calm as the pulse of an ancient empire, beating beneath the mountains and plains of a world, long vanished yet somehow still alive in this quiet moment. Cyrus was born around 600 BCE into a world of competing powers and shifting alliances, a world where empires rose and fell like the swelling and receding of great tides. The great empires of the ancient Near East, Assyria, Babylon, Egypt, had dominated the region for centuries, their armies marching back and forth across the Fertile Crescent, their kings building monuments that scraped the sky. The Medes, relatives of the Persians, had helped destroy Assyria and now ruled over a vast territory from their capital at Ecbatana, a city nestled in the mountains, cool and austere, its palaces glittering with captured treasure. The Persians were their vassals, paying tribute, providing soldiers, living in the shadow of their more powerful cousins, waiting as seeds wait beneath winter snow for their season to arrive. But destiny, the Persians believed, had other plans, all plans written in the stars that wheeled above the Zagros mountains, plans whispered by the winds that swept down from the high plateaus. Legend says that before Cyrus was born, the Median king Astyages had a dream. In the dream, his daughter gave birth to a vine that grew until it covered all of Asia, its tendrils spreading across mountains and rivers, across deserts and seas, until there was no land it had not touched. Troubled, the king consulted his priests, the magi who studied dreams and portents, who read the future in the flight of birds and the patterns of smoke rising from sacred fires. They warned him that his grandson would one day overthrow him, would take his throne and his kingdom and his power. And so, when Cyrus was born, Astyages ordered his general, a man named Harpagus, to take the baby into the mountains and kill him, to leave the tiny body for the wolves and eagles, to end the threat before it could begin. Let the story carry you. Let your muscles soften. Let the ancient drama play out in the theatre of your drowsy mind, like shadows dancing on cave walls in the firelight. The general could not bring himself to murder the child. Something stayed his hand, perhaps compassion, perhaps fear of the gods who protected the innocent, perhaps simply the knowledge that killing babies rarely ends well for anyone involved. Instead, He gave the baby to a shepherd and his wife, humble people who lived in a stone hut high in the mountains, who tended their flocks among wildflowers and rushing streams. They raised Cyrus as their own, calling him by a common name, clothing him in rough wool, teaching him the ways of the hills and the herds. The boy grew strong and clever, his eyes bright with intelligence, his spirit marked by a natural authority that even the other children recognized. He was a natural leader among the children of the village, organizing their games, settling their disputes, commanding their loyalty without effort. One day, playing with other boys, young Cyrus was chosen to play the role of king in a game of make-believe. The children built a throne of stones and draped it with sheepskins. They fashioned crowns of woven grass. They created a court complete with ministers and servants and guards. When a noble's son, the child of a visiting aristocrat, refused to obey King Cyrus, the boy who was really a prince had him beaten, not cruelly, but firmly, as a king would punish a disobedient subject. Word of this reached Astyages, and something in the story made him suspicious, made the hair rise on the back of his royal neck. He summoned the shepherd, questioned him with increasing intensity, and learned the truth, discovered that his ordered murder had never been carried out, that the baby had lived, that the vine of his dream had taken root after all. But rather than kill the boy now, a killing that would have been much harder to accomplish and much more dangerous to order, Astyages was convinced by his priests that the dream's prophecy had been harmlessly fulfilled. The boy had ruled as king in a children's game, and the danger was past, the future safely averted through the logic of symbol and metaphor. He sent Cyrus to Persia, to his true parents, to the royal house of the Achaemenid clan, where the boy learned who he really was and began to dream of who he might become. Breathe in, hold it gently, and release, feeling the air leave your body, like tension dissolving, like worries floating away on a warm evening breeze. The story continues, carrying you deeper. Years passed, years that saw Cyrus grow from boy to youth to man, his body hardening, his mind sharpening, his ambition crystallizing into something bright and dangerous. He became king of Persia, still a vassal of the Medes, still paying tribute to the grandfather who had once tried to murder him. But he was restless and ambitious, and the Persians were ready to follow him, ready to step out of the shadows and into the light of history. Around 550 BCE, Cyrus led a revolt against Astyages. The Median army marched out to crush the rebellion, thousands of soldiers in bronze armor, chariots gleaming in the mountain sun, confident in their superiority, certain of victory. But Astyages had made enemies during his long and sometimes cruel reign. His own generals, including Harpagus, the man who had spared the baby decades before, betrayed him. They delivered the king to Cyrus in chains. The dream fulfilled at last, the vine covering all of Asia, just as the Magi had foretold. And here, the story takes an unexpected turn, a turn that would define not just Cyrus, but the entire character of Persian civilization. Cyrus did not execute his grandfather. He did not torture him or display him in humiliation, did not parade him through the streets in a cage, did not blind him or mutilate him as other conquerors had done to defeated kings. Instead, he treated Astyages with respect, allowed him to live out his days in comfort, honored him as family, even though that family had tried to kill him in his cradle. This mercy, this restraint, this astonishing capacity for forgiveness would become the hallmark of Cyrus's reign, the thread that runs through every conquest, every victory, every expansion of his growing empire. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands lie still. Let the weight of kindness in this ancient story settle into your bones. Warm and reassuring, with the Medes united under his rule, their soldiers now his soldiers, their lands now his lands. Cyrus turned his attention to the wealthy kingdom of Lydia, in what is now Western Turkey. Lydia was rich beyond measure, its rivers running with gold washed down from mountain sources, its merchants trading across the known world. Its king, Croesus, was legendary for his wealth, for his palace adorned with treasures, for his court where poets and philosophers gathered to enjoy his lavish hospitality. The phrase "rich as Croesus" would echo through the ages, would be spoken by people who had never heard of Lydia or the rivers that made it glitter. Croesus consulted the famous oracle at Delphi before going to war against this upstart Persian king. The priestess breathed the sacred vapors, entered her trance, and spoke the words of Apollo. "If you attack Persia," the oracle said, "you will destroy a great empire." Croesus took this as encouragement, as divine blessing for his military adventure. He did not consider, did not imagine, that the empire destroyed might be his own. The war was brief, briefer than anyone expected. Cyrus captured Sardis, the Lydian capital. Its fabled wealth, now Persian wealth, its markets and palaces now under new rule. And Croesus himself was taken prisoner, brought before the conqueror who had shattered his dreams of glory. Again, the expected cruelty did not come. The torture chamber remained empty. The executioner's blade stayed sheathed. According to Herodotus, the Greek historian who preserved these stories, Croesus became an advisor to Cyrus, living at the Persian court. His wisdom valued even in defeat. His counsel sought on matters of importance. The defeated king became a trusted companion, and the conquest became something more, like a merger. Feel the gentleness of this history, the unexpected softness in the story of conquest, the possibility that power need not always be cruel. But the crown jewel of Cyrus's conquests was yet to come, the prize that would cement his place in history forever. Babylon, the ancient wonder, the city of Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar, of the Hanging Gardens and the Tower of Babel, still stood as the greatest city in the world. Its walls were legendary, impossibly thick, wide enough for chariots to race along their tops, impossibly high, pierced by massive gates covered in glazed blue tiles depicting lions and dragons. Armies had broken themselves against those walls for centuries, had camped outside them, and starved and given up and gone home. Babylon fell to Cyrus in 539 BCE, and it fell almost without a fight, almost without a siege, almost without blood. The Babylonian king, Nabonidus, had alienated his own people through years of religious reforms they did not want. He had neglected the city's patron god. Marduk, the divine protector of Babylon, and the priests were furious, performing their rituals in anger, praying for deliverance. The population was weary of a king who seemed to care more about antiquarian research than about governing. When Cyrus and his army approached, when his reputation for mercy preceded him, the gates were opened from within, by priests, by merchants, by ordinary people who had decided that this foreign king might be better than their own. Cyrus entered Babylon not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. At least, that is how he presented himself, and how the Babylonians chose to receive him, cheering in the streets, strewing flowers before his chariot, welcoming the Persian king as the instrument of Marduk's will. Breathe slowly. Let the ancient city materialize around you in the darkness behind your closed eyes. Its ziggurat rising against the stars, its gardens perfuming the night air, its canals reflecting torchlight. What happened next would echo through millennia, would be remembered when Babylon itself had crumbled to dust. Cyrus issued a proclamation, inscribed on a clay cylinder in the wedge-shaped cuneiform script of Mesopotamia, a cylinder that still survives, that you could see today in a museum in London, that historians sometimes call the first declaration of human rights. He freed slaves, opened the doors of bondage, and let people walk out into freedom. He allowed displaced peoples to return to their homelands, to rebuild their houses, to plant their gardens again. He restored temples that previous conquerors had destroyed, sent back stolen statues of gods to their proper shrines. He permitted all his subjects to worship their own gods in their own ways, asking only loyalty and taxes in return. "I am Cyrus," the cylinder proclaims in proud cuneiform, "King of the world, great king, mighty king, king of Babylon, whose rule the gods Marduk and Nabu love, whose sovereignty they desire for their heart's pleasure. But beyond the royal boasting, beyond the propaganda of empire, there were concrete policies of astonishing tolerance, real actions that changed real lives. The Jewish people, who had been exiled in Babylon since Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem decades earlier, were allowed to return home, to see their holy city again, to walk the streets their grandparents had walked. Cyrus even provided resources to help them rebuild their temple: gold from the royal treasury, timber from royal forests, official blessing for their sacred project. In the Hebrew Bible, Cyrus is called God's anointed, Mashiach, the only non-Jew ever given that title in Jewish scripture, a pagan king praised as the instrument of divine will. Let that settle into you, a conqueror so remarkable that his former enemies praised him in their holiest texts, a king whose mercy was remembered for thousands of years. The empire Cyrus built would continue to grow after his death in 530 BCE, fighting against nomads on the eastern frontier. His body brought home for burial in a simple tomb that still stands. His son Cambyses added Egypt, marching across the Sinai desert to claim the land of the pharaohs. Darius the Earth expanded eastward toward India and westward toward Greece, organizing and consolidating and building. The empire reached its greatest extent under Xerxes, who would famously try and fail to conquer the Greek city-states, who would watch his fleet destroyed at Salamis and return home in defeat. But the character of the empire, its tolerance, its organization, its philosophy of governance, all of this was established by Cyrus. He created something unprecedented in human history, a multicultural state that functioned not through terror, but through administration, not through uniformity, but through respect for difference, not through cruelty, but through an understanding that empire works better when people are content. Feel your breath slowing further. Feel the peace of an empire at rest. Feel the weight of centuries settling gently around you. Darius the Great built upon Cyrus's foundations with organizational genius that still impresses modern scholars. He divided the empire into 20 provinces called satrapies, each with its satrap, its military commander, its tax collector, each reporting independently to the king through different channels. This system of checks and balances prevented any single official from becoming too powerful, from building a base for rebellion, from dreaming of independence. The royal road stretched across the empire like a ribbon of civilization, posting stations every 15 miles, fresh horses always waiting, riders ready to gallop through day and night. Messages could travel from Susa to Sardis in just 9 days, a distance that would take a normal traveler 3 months on foot. This was faster communication than anything Europe would achieve until the telegraph, more than 2,000 years later, a marvel of organization and engineering. Darius also standardized the currency throughout his realm. The gold daric, stamped with the image of the king drawing a bow, became trusted across the ancient world, accepted in markets from India to Egypt to the shores of the Aegean Sea. Trade flourished. Merchants could travel from the Indus Valley to the Greek colonies, knowing that the roads were safe. The money was sound. The laws were predictable. The king's peace enforced throughout. Let the weight of good governance settle over you like a blanket, protecting you, ordering the chaos of the world into something manageable, something peaceful. And always, throughout the empire, the gardens. Darius built a garden at Susa that visitors described with breathless wonder, that ambassadors wrote home about in amazement. Fruit trees from across the empire, apricots and pomegranates and figs arranged in orderly rows, flowers arranged in geometric patterns, roses and lilies and jasmine, their scents mingling in the evening air, water channels crossing and recrossing, fed by underground aqueducts called kanats that brought snowmelt from distant mountains, keeping everything green even in the summer heat. Paradise, paradisa, the walled garden where order and beauty flourished, where the chaos of the wild was transformed into something serene. The king would walk in this garden in the cool of evening, his robes trailing on the damp grass, dictating letters to scribes who hurried alongside, receiving reports from distant provinces, making decisions that would affect millions of lives across thousands of miles. And sometimes, perhaps, he would simply stand still, listening to the nightingales, watching the light fade from the sky, feeling the peace that gardens bring. Breathe in the scent of roses, somewhere distant in your imagination, and feel yourself drifting deeper into the ancient peace. The great kings are long gone now, their palaces crumbled to ruins that archaeologists carefully excavate, their inscriptions weathered by millennia of sun and wind and rain. But the roses still bloom in Iran. The mountains still catch snow each winter. The stars still wheel overhead as they did when Cyrus walked the earth, when Darius dictated his letters, when the empire stretched from sea to sea. And you are here, safe in this moment, wrapped in the story of an empire that believed, whatever its faults, in mercy, in organization, in the possibility of a world where different peoples could live together under a single sheltering rule, where conquered did not mean destroyed, where defeat did not mean death. Let that belief cradle you as sleep draws nearer, as the ancient peace settles deeper into your bones, as the story prepares to turn toward mysteries yet unexplored. There are mysteries in ancient Persia, questions that scholars have puzzled over for centuries, unanswered riddles that drift like smoke through the corridors of history. Let these mysteries wrap around you now, soft and strange. As you sink deeper towards sleep, breathe slowly. Let the questions float without needing answers. Let the unknown become a comfortable darkness. Persepolis burned. In 330 BCE, Alexander of Macedon, the young conqueror, who would be called the Great, entered the ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire. What happened next is one of history's enduring puzzles. The ancient sources tell us that Alexander allowed his soldiers to plunder the city, and that then, either in a moment of drunken impulse or deliberate policy, he ordered Persepolis to be burned. The fire consumed the great palace complex, its cedar ceilings, its painted walls, its accumulated treasures of 2 centuries. Some say it was revenge for the Persian destruction of Athens 150 years earlier. Others say it was an accident that spiraled out of control. The Roman historian Plutarch tells a story of a Greek courtesan named Thais, who suggested the burning at a drunken banquet, and Alexander, intoxicated, took up the first torch. But why? Alexander had conquered the empire. He was adopting Persian customs, wearing Persian clothes, taking Persian nobles into his inner circle. Persepolis was now his. Why destroy it? Let the question drift, unanswered, like smoke dissolving in air. There are deeper mysteries. The religion of ancient Persia, Zoroastrianism, was one of the most influential faiths in human history. Its ideas about good and evil, angels and demons, heaven and hell, resurrection and final judgment. These concepts appear throughout later religions. Scholars trace threads connecting Zoroaster's teachings to Judaism, to Christianity, to Islam, even to Buddhism. But when did Zoroaster actually live? The estimates range across centuries, from 1500 BCE to 600 BCE. Some scholars place him before the Bronze Age collapse, a prophet speaking in a world that would soon convulse in chaos. Others put him just a few generations before Cyrus, a near contemporary whose ideas were still fresh when the empire rose. We know remarkably little about the historical Zoroaster. The texts attributed to him, the Gathas, are difficult poems in an archaic language. They speak of a man who struggled against opposition, who wandered in search of a patron, who eventually found support from a king called Vishtaspa. Beyond this, the details dissolve into legend and speculation. Feel the mystery, like mist, soft against your skin, unknowable and beautiful. And what of the gardens? The Persians were master hydraulic engineers. They built underground water channels called qanats that could transport water for miles without evaporation. Some of these systems, dug more than 2,000 years ago, are still functioning today in Iran. But there were legendary gardens, the hanging gardens of Babylon, that may never have existed at all. Ancient writers describe them as one of the 7 wonders of the world, terraced gardens rising to great heights, watered by machines that lifted water from the Euphrates River. Yet no archaeological evidence of these gardens has ever been found in Babylon. Some scholars now believe that the hanging gardens were actually in the Assyrian capital of Nineveh, or perhaps in Persia itself. Others suspect they are entirely mythical, a dream of paradise that ancient writers reported without ever seeing. The gardens hang in history, suspended between fact and imagination, unreachable, beautiful, possibly never real. Let your grip on certainty relax. Let the boundary between true and dreamed grow soft. The Persians kept records, extensive records, on clay tablets and parchment and papyrus. The royal archives at Persepolis contain thousands of administrative tablets recording wages paid, materials distributed, workers employed. These tablets survived the burning because they were stored in rooms that were buried when the palace collapsed. The fire actually baked them harder, preserving them for archaeologists to discover. But the main archives, the royal histories, the chronicles of kings, the philosophical texts and religious scriptures, these were written on perishable materials. They burned with the palace, or crumbled over centuries, or were lost when Alexander's empire in turn fell apart. What did we lose? What poems? What stories? What wisdom went up in smoke at Persepolis? The Persians surely had their own historians, their own poets, their own voices telling their own story. But almost everything we know about them comes from Greek sources, from foreigners who were often enemies, who filtered Persian history through their own perspectives and prejudices. The Persians themselves are largely silent, their voices lost, their version of events unrecoverable. Breathe slowly. Let the silence fill you, comfortable and dark. There are physical mysteries too. The tomb of Cyrus the Great still stands at Pasargadae, a simple stone structure on a stepped platform, remarkably modest for the founder of such a vast empire. Alexander visited this tomb when he conquered Persia and reportedly found it had been robbed. The golden sarcophagus that once held Cyrus's body was gone, the rich burial goods stripped away. Alexander ordered the tomb restored and guards posted, but of the body of Cyrus himself, nothing remained. Where are his bones? Were they scattered by the robbers, or hidden by loyal followers who feared what conquerors might do? Cyrus the Great, whose conquests shaped the ancient world, whose decrees echo in concepts of human rights today, lies in an unknown place. Let the kings rest, wherever they are, in the long sleep of the ages. The Persian language evolved through millennia, from the Old Persian of royal inscriptions, through Middle Persian to the Farsi spoken in Iran today. There is a thread of continuity, words that have survived across 2,500 years, connecting modern Iranians to their ancient ancestors. But so much is lost in translation. So much meaning evaporated as languages shifted. When the Persians spoke of the lie, their great religious concept of cosmic falsehood opposed to truth, what exactly did they mean? When they called their garden a paradisa, what feelings and associations clustered around that word that we cannot recover? Language is a living thing. It breathes and changes and dies. The Old Persian of Darius is a dead language now, reconstructed by scholars, spoken by no one. We can read the inscriptions, we can translate the words, but something is always lost. Some flavor, some music, some quality of mind. Feel the mystery of all the thoughts that have been thought and forgotten, all the dreams that have been dreamed and dissolved. The Persians believed in truth, but they also practiced sophisticated disinformation. Darius's great inscription at Behistun, carved into a cliff face hundreds of feet above the road, tells the story of how he came to power. He claims that he overthrew a usurper who had seized the throne by pretending to be the dead son of Cyrus. But some scholars suspect that Darius himself was the usurper, and that his inscription is elaborate propaganda justifying a coup. We will never know for certain. The Behistun inscription, is one of our most important sources for Persian history, and it may be a carefully constructed lie. Let truth and untruth blur at the edges, as they always do, as they always have. The Persian Empire fell, but Persia did not. The land continued, conquered and reconquered, by Greeks and Parthians and Sasanians and Arabs and Mongols and more. Each wave of conquest left its mark, but something Persian persisted through it all. Today, the roses still bloom in Iran, the carpets are still woven, the gardens are still planted and tended with ancient skill. The poetry of Rumi and Hafiz, written 1,000 years after the Achaemenid Empire fell, still draws on images and ideas that Cyrus would have recognized. The paradise, the walled garden, is still there. Changed, renamed, surrounded by a modern city now, but rooted in soil that has known gardens for millennia. Breathe in and smell the roses. They have been blooming for 2,500 years, and they will bloom long after you wake from tonight's sleep. The mysteries remain. The questions drift unanswered. The ancient Persians keep their secrets, as all the dead eventually do. But the beauty they created, the ideas they planted, these continue. They grow in the garden of human history, roses that never stop blooming. Let the mysteries surround you like the walls of a garden, protecting you from the need to know, allowing you simply to rest in the paradise of peaceful unknowing. And now, the history begins to fade. The great kings and their empires, the conquests and the chronicles. These things grow distant, like mountains seen through evening haze, like cities viewed from a ship sailing slowly out to sea, their towers growing smaller, their lights growing dimmer, until they are merely suggestions of what they once were. You are no longer traveling through time. You are simply here, simply resting, simply breathing. Feel the weight of your body, how heavy your limbs have become, how still your hands lie against the softness beneath them, how your feet have forgotten themselves entirely. They could be made of stone now, ancient stone, weathered by centuries of wind and silence. The gardens of Persia, still somewhere in your mind, but softer now, less distinct. Just the impression of flowers, just the faintest memory of water moving over smooth stones, just the cool air of evening settling over your skin like silk. Breathe, slower still. Let the names fade. Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, Persepolis. Let them become just sounds, just whispers, just the wind moving through distant trees that you will never need to see. These names held so much power once, commanded armies, built monuments that touched the sky. But now they are only syllables, dissolving like morning mist, like honey in warm water, like the last light of a winter afternoon. Your breath is the fountain now. Each exhale, a ripple of water spreading outward across a still pool. Each inhale, the scent of roses carried from gardens you have already forgotten, from courtyards you could not find again if you tried. The torchlights are dimming. One by one, the flames are guttering out, leaving only darkness. Comfortable darkness. Safe darkness. The kind of darkness that wraps around you like the finest Persian wool, woven by hands that ceased their work centuries ago. You don't need to remember anything now. You don't need to understand. The empire has fallen asleep, and so have its stories. The scribes have set down their reed pens. The clay tablets have been stored away. The records of kings and battles and treaties, all filed in libraries that crumbled long ago. Your eyelids are so heavy. They have been heavy for a while now, but you notice it more clearly in this moment. The weight of sleep pressing down. The gentlest pressure, like rose petals accumulating one by one on a still pool of water. Like snow falling on a sleeping garden. Like centuries settling over forgotten ruins. Let them stay closed. The stars above Persia. The same stars that guided caravans across endless deserts. The same stars above you now. They wheel slowly through the night, but you don't need to watch them. You don't need to count them. They will shine whether you see them or not. They have been shining since before there were empires, and they will shine long after. In, so slowly, and out, even slower. The gardens are very quiet now. Even the nightingales have stopped singing, their small throats at rest, their feathers fluffed against the cooling air. Even the fountains have grown still, their waters settling into perfect mirrors that reflect nothing but darkness. Just the roses, blooming in the night, their petals soft as the sleep that rises around you like warm water. Paradise. A walled garden, a protected space where nothing can harm you, where time itself forgets to move forward. You are in that space now. The walls are high and old and covered with climbing vines, whose leaves rustle softly in a breeze you cannot quite feel. Nothing can reach you here. Nothing can disturb you. The gates are closed. The guards are sleeping. The whole world is sleeping. Just the scent of flowers. Just the coolness of night settling into your bones. Just your breath. Slowing, slowing, becoming almost indistinguishable from silence itself. The Persian Empire stretched across half the world. But your world is very small now. Just the space your body occupies. Just the warmth beneath your blankets. Just this moment, and then the next moment, and then nothing you need to count, nothing you need to measure, nothing you need to understand. Let go of counting, let go of measuring, let go of time itself. That river that carried empires away, that river that does not exist here in this garden of sleep. The ancient kings are sleeping. They have been sleeping for millennia. Their dreams are unimaginable now, lost in the darkness of ages. Whatever they hoped for, whatever they feared, all of it has dissolved into the same peaceful nothing. Your dreams are approaching. They will come soon, or they are already here. It doesn't matter which. They require nothing from you. The underground water channels that the Persians built, the qanats that carried life through desert lands, still flowing somewhere, in darkness, invisible. The water doesn't need light. It flows in perfect darkness. It has been flowing for thousands of years, and it will continue, without effort, without thought. Let your thoughts flow like that water, quiet, underground, moving without effort towards some destination you do not need to name. Your hands are so relaxed. Your fingers are soft and still, curved slightly, like sleeping birds. Your palms are open, receiving nothing, needing nothing, simply resting. Your feet are far away. You can barely remember having feet. They belong to the darkness now, like distant provinces of an empire you no longer rule. Your face, let the muscles of your face relax completely. Let your forehead smooth like still water. Let your jaw hang loose. Let your eyes rest deep in their sockets, seeing nothing, needing to see nothing. The roses bloom in the dark. They don't need eyes to be beautiful. They don't need anyone to see them. Beauty exists even in perfect darkness. You don't need to see anything now. The empire of sleep is vast. It stretches across all the lands of the night, welcoming everyone who comes to its borders. It makes no demands. It asks for no tribute. It requires only surrender. You are a citizen of that empire now. Breathe, so slowly, almost not breathing at all. The walls of the garden, sheltering you. The stars, wheeling overhead, unseen, uncounted. The roses, blooming, silent, eternal. The water has stopped flowing, or you have stopped hearing it. It doesn't matter which. Both are the same. Both are peace. Roses somewhere, their fragrance fading, like the last light of a candle, dimming, softening, becoming part of the darkness itself. Your breath, barely a whisper, barely there at all. A gentle tide, rising, falling, so slow now. In, out, in, gone. The garden has dissolved. The walls are shadows. The flowers are dreams. The empire is memory. And memory is sleep. Nothing to think. Nothing to hold. Nothing to carry. The ancient world has become the present moment, has become no moment at all. Time itself has wandered off, leaving you here, in this perfect stillness, deep and still and peaceful. The stars continue their slow wheel above you, but you are beyond the stars now, deeper than the night, deeper than history, resting in a place that has no name, no borders, no beginning or end. The walled garden, where nothing can reach you, where nothing is asked of you, where you simply exist, in warmth, in softness, in endless peace. Let the silence hold you. Let the darkness cradle you. You have always been home.